Hi, I'm Julie Joffrey with the Elite Graduate Program. Welcome to Take Time to Make Time, Regaining Control workshop. Today we are honored to have Lisa Schoelen here to be our speaker. Lisa is a graduate student in counseling here at A&M University. She is doing her internship at the University Counseling Center, and she is an elite cohort member. With no further ado, let's welcome Lisa.
Hi and welcome. Thank you guys for taking your time to come learn about how to regain control of your time. It is one of those things where it is just the irony of it that I don't even have time to come fit in a time workshop. So today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about, how we can feel like we do have time. So today's time management agenda, I just wanted to start right in by saying that I want to help put you in the driver's seat in this race against time. That's kind of how we all feel about time sometimes, is that it's this race that we're in. And so we'll use that kind of analogy to help us get started. Time, it's always about time. We'll go over a little bit just about time in general and our relationship to time. So, you know, just there's a race going on that we're in. Then we'll look at some time assessment, and we'll just be real and take an honest look at how we use our time and what time is available to us, depending on all our unique priorities. So, you know, kind of looking at the conditions of the racetrack, what you have to work within. And then we'll look at our time management toolkit, practical ways to increase your productivity, your efficiency, looking out for things that are your time bandits and your procrastination tactics. So, you know, in the race analogy, how you're going to beat your opponents, how you're going to work out the obstacles, how you're going to enjoy the adventure, and how you're going to be a winning contender. And notice I didn't mention how you're going to win the race, because I think we all feel like that's what we're always having to do, but it never ends. You know, we're on this racetrack that just keeps going around, and there's no finish line. Finish line is the culmination of our life, but we want to just be a winning contender in this constant journey that we're on. So, let's talk about time and just kind of ponder what is your relationship to time. We mentioned it's like a race we're against, but what are other ways that we kind of perceive our time?
I mean, you feel like you have a just certain amount of time. You may have more things to do, so you have to see what, you know, prioritizing what you're going to do with this, you know, certain given amount of time.
So it's something that's limited and it's finite and you have to work within it. Okay.
I think of it in terms of deadlines. You want to finish something by a certain day or time, or by the end of the week, and it's by the time you know it, it's there, and you haven't tackled, you know, half the things you sometimes wish you had tackled or should have tackled.
So kind of what I'm hearing is it's this construct that is kind of our opponent, or something we have to learn how to manage, maybe as opposed to something that's been given to us and that we get to utilize, which it's those things too, but with our increasing demands, it feels more like something that we're having to work against. Okay. What do you like about time, or your time, or that's kind of the angle that we forget because of all of our priorities.
It feels like there's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough time. So
Do you like your free time?
I like, what I think is time during the week seems to drag, or you don't have enough time to complete your task. But then when you have your free time, it seems to go by too quickly.
Yeah.
that's, yeah, a good point.
The old cliche, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Weekends go by
Twice as fast.
Twice as fast.
right, and the weeks do go by slower, but even at that, I know I still run out of time to do the things I have to do in a week. So.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about time. We've just kind of talked about where our time goes. We feel like there's not enough of it when we need it to be productive in work, but when we have the free time, it's flying right by. What are your time obstacles? You said deadlines, having too much to fit into a certain amount of time, I heard you guys mention. How do your values and priorities and habits influence how you spend your time?
How you set your priorities.
How you set them?
I mean, your priorities meaning, you know, you tend to do the things you like first and put off the things you don't like.
Okay. All right, so also can you relate with we often feel guilty having to tell other people kind of what we need to put first as opposed to helping them, and so we end up kind of being feeling guilty for our own patterns and beliefs that we need to help everybody else out, and we put ourselves second stage. So that's the way that our values and priorities play into it, or even our habits. If we notice that we come home with the idea that we're going to sit down and watch TV for just a minute and then get up and do things, and then we fall into, well, I have my favorite 7 o'clock show and 7:30 show and then our whole evening is TV and we meant to get other things done. Or social networking sites, things that might start out as something as a retreat from our priorities or a way to relax for a few minutes and then get back to it, and do those habits end up being something that helps us or holds us back?
One of the problems I have is probably in that category is saying no. A lot of times people say, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And I try to fit everybody in, and then that's when I feel overwhelmed because I can't get to everybody. And then I don't even do sometimes the things I needed to do myself.
Absolutely.
So saying no is hard for me.
And really the interesting thing about that is that then we feel cheated. And then we get more overwhelmed. And here it was, we were doing something that was altruistic and that was supposed to be helpful and good, but it doesn't leave us feeling any of those things in the end. It feels more depleted and more exhausting. So it's how do we find that balance of putting our needs and mixed in with all the new demands that keep coming up. As we've talked about, time is a precious resource. It's limited. We can't create more. But things keep happening and we get more and more busier. So how do we cope with that? And kind of based on what you just even mentioned, we start operating on stress overload. And we spend more time doing more of these things that start kind of snowballing. And then when we do have time to relax, like you guys were mentioning, it kind of flies by. We might end up not utilizing that to the best of our abilities. We almost veg out and escape or do things where it's just, I don't want to have to think for a while, and then we don't even get to the leisurely things that we want to have time for as well. And so we put off vacations, we put off our hobbies, and those are the things that would help balance out our stress and our pressures, but now we don't even have time for those. And so it just becomes a vicious cycle of busyness. So that was kind of depressing to have to ponder, but it's recognizing that and saying, okay, then how can we master our time? Because when we do, then we master our life. And some research has shown that effective people know that mastering time management really is the backbone to all the success in their life. It helps them feel like they have control of what's going on, and your schedule's not running you. You're in the driver's seat in this race. Effective people also know that mastering time management is an ongoing process. So you never get to a place where you have arrived and I am the time management expert, because things are changing. Technology creates new obstacles. We invented cars and that helped us get to work faster, but we now have oil changes and tire rotations and more duties those added. We added instant email instead of snail mail, so that should be more efficient, but how many of us get stuck cleaning out our emails, dealing with emails, and now it's an added weight, it's an added obstacle. So it's kind of like time management fitness. It's like having a fitness plan is regularly going to the gym. You don't just get to a point where you are a top athlete and then you've arrived and you have to do nothing else. It is an ongoing process. So I just say that to give you encouragement that you're always going to be kind of navigating those obstacles, but to not be overwhelmed, that you can get to a place, and we'll talk about those tools where you can manage them. So speaking of where does time go, with any fitness plan, if we're thinking of it just like with fitness, you have to stay on top of it. We'll assess how much time do you spend in your personal, social, and academic pursuits. There's 168 hours in each week, so if we were to take an honest look, we will start at the beginning of our toolkit of our resources of how we're going to do that. We'll look at our weekly schedule, and then we'll, in a little bit, go on to semester and to-do list. But on the weekly budget, let me hand these out for you guys. Or did you got that one?
Yes, we got that.
Okay. And I gave you the whole packet. And I'll show you the color-coded one I kind of did just to give you a good visual to start, because you all know you have your own times. But you block out your sleep time. And ironically, this made me recognize something in myself. My sleep time on all these 168 hours, I literally put was, at 1 a.m. And I was like, wait a minute, and then, how am I guess maybe it does stop there and start back at 6 a.m. on this particular chart. But sleep is also an important factor. If we're exhausted, how efficient are we going to be? But you write in all the activities that are fixed: class, work, meals, meetings. And some of those to me have to become flexible. For me, kind of meals, I work around my different schedules, because some days it's not 12 to 1 for every single person. So for mine, it was the competing priorities of internship or job or actual classes, Toastmasters, those kinds of things. I color-coded it, but it starts to really show you what time do I actually, what am I really working with here? Because time is this construct we've all established that we don't have enough of, we can't create more of, so we have to work within these confines. And once you start highlighting it and you realize, do I really have that much free time? What am I doing with that free time? So then you can really start to see, oh, well, I was home every night from 4 to 8, but it's not till about 8 o'clock that I start getting productive. What am I doing between that time? Am I on the internet? Am I texting? Am I on the phone? Am I taking a nap? Which some things could be positive. You could be using that time, but just starting to get familiar and recognizing what it is that your timetable really looks like. Once you do that, you can schedule some of the other things that are more flexible, like the study time and the social and personal time. And you can really look at it from starting to recognize yourself. If you're a night owl versus a morning person, then when is the best time? When do I know that I get in kind of a productive mode? And start putting those things there so you're not kind of trying to do something against your own nature. If you tend to want to work out more in the evening, but you keep telling yourself, I'm going to get up in the morning and exercise, and you keep not doing it, then you're already discouraged because you're not doing one of your goals. So putting it actually in the plan and the schedule where it actually accommodates your particular personality as well. So kind of speaking of individual personalities, individual priorities, what are your top 3 priorities for this month? Or for any general month? It could be, for a typical grad student, it's getting through the semester. It might be an upcoming vacation you have on spring break, and you need to make those plans. And the top 3 things that really, when you're going to look back 10 years from now, are what matter, not the daily minutia of, I had to return this person's phone call, I had to go renew my parking pass, all those things that aren't really going to matter. What are the top 3 things that, maybe a year or 2 from now, you really are glad that you got accomplished that month and that year? So just starting to look at that once you've kind of seen the framework you have to work within is a good starting point as well. Because I really love this quote, the things that matter most should never be at the mercy of the things that matter least. And that's what we were talking about before, whether it's doing all these things everybody else needs or things that just come up, and then our goals of training for a 5K or our goals of studying for our licensing exam are always on the back burner, and we end up doing that big P word, which is procrastinate or not reaching our goals. So learning how to manage that minutia of all the little things that we have going on so that the things that really do matter in our lives don't become at the mercy of those. So another way we do that is kind of what we talked about. Start seeing your big priorities, your big picture, your major events, so that this is kind of your daily, weekly, and then if you have a master calendar of the semester or however your life is set up monthly, then okay, I have this big test in 3 weeks. How can I prepare a little bit with what free time I have on these spaces? And you can write those in. And maybe those are the ones you have to write in pencil because they do have to be more flexible. Or deadlines that are coming up so that it doesn't become that week and then you've forgotten to do those things. So it's a way of incorporating your major events kind of superimposed on the daily details to start to just really get a handle and a picture of everything you're dealing with. So it really is, I like the name of this workshop, Taking Time to Make Time. You really do maybe have to take an hour out of your life, 30 minutes every Sunday night, to look at the week ahead, to plan things out and see, so that it keeps you in the driver's seat and all of a sudden everything's not snowballing and now you're the one running behind. So speaking of uncovering time bandits, keeping a time inventory for 1 week might be a good idea, how to start really identifying your time bandits. But a lot of us know ourselves well, and we start to identify what we do and what obstacles are in our way that either we waste time or that others waste our time. And it might not be that people are meaning to, but we can all probably identify, like I mentioned earlier, a time of day when you might be most or least productive, and what task you might eliminate. So does any of these resonate for anyone that you know some of your own time bandits?
I know that I'm a morning person, and so I try to do certain tasks that I really have to think, and actually I can see myself go through these tasks quicker when I put them in the morning, because I am a morning person. I can get them done quicker, versus at the end of the day, sometimes I don't finish, or if I have to tackle something that for me is a little more difficult, or I have to think more, I don't think as well in the afternoon, and so they drag on, and so I know what I have to move to the morning to get done quicker. So that's something that I'm aware of that I have to do.
So you're aware of when you're most productive. Okay. Again, when are my big and small chunks of free time? Just recognizing those on here. I think one of my biggest time bandits is that, and we'll go over this a little bit later, but looking at things several times. Because we want to be connected and we need to, do I need to check my email? Has so-and-so responded? I'll go check it and I get 5 new emails and I pop them open and I look at each one. But I was on my way to lunch anyway, so I leave. And then I come back and, oh yeah, I've got to deal with those 5 emails. And so then I sit there and I look at them again. But then one of them helps remind me, oh yeah, I was going to call so-and-so. And then I start doing that. And then I get back. And 3 times now, I've looked at these 5 emails I'm supposed to address and I haven't done them. So this time bandit is this constant idea of multitasking for me. And multitasking is a very big, controversial, does it work, is it effective, is it not? Julie, you
I can relate. That is my job.
Yeah.
Multitasking.
Right.
And there are times when I'm very productive with it, and there's other times that I'm just spinning my wheels and not really getting one thing done. But sometimes it really, when it works, it's awesome.
Right.
Like for me too, when I try to multitask, I just feel overwhelmed basically. So I just try and get one thing and just do it. Because I don't know, you start to do this and do that, and I can't even be like as productive and, focused on this one task. It's not going to be as quality, that's just, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to focus.
Right. All right. So you guys can all relate with some of those. And then of course, a very big time killer is procrastination, and everybody has varying levels of those and kind of seasons of those, times when your procrastination button has kicked in. So, being aware of your areas of academic procrastination, is it certain subjects that you put off? Is it certain things that maybe are less interesting to you, so those aren't the ones that the energy can pull you to it itself? What do you say to yourself to justify procrastinating? And I think sometimes that's a really interesting one, because it's the subtle, what you're not saying to yourself, but you are saying, wow, I want to clean my bathroom today, even though I have this paper to write. Like, wow, the bathroom never bothered you all week long, and now suddenly today is the day we're going to clean the bathroom, we're going to clean out the pantry, do all those things. So it's not that are we really saying something to ourselves consciously, but I think what we might be saying to ourselves is, I'm nervous about, maybe that's a typical one, I'm nervous about doing this, so you're kind of trying to channel that energy. And then how do you procrastinate? Some people do different things. So does anyone have a personal one they know of that's their style?
I think everyone deals with procrastination. It's just, there's something there and you just don't want to do it. There will be different levels of procrastination, but I don't know, I think we should talk about ways to deal with it. I've just tried to take my emotions out of it. I'm not going to like to do it anyways, but I'm going to have to do it anyways, so I just don't think about it, just do it. Kind of how.
Yes. That's funny that you say that. That is one of the, one of the ones I was going to talk about. That is one of the techniques to kind of tackle procrastination. which is the next slide. Knocking out those bandits and those procrastination tactics. And again, your most challenging task, the one you keep putting off often, is the one you're most likely to procrastinate, but it's the one that will have the greatest impact on your life if you'll just do it. So let's watch just a 1-minute little blurb about that. We don't?
Just on the computer.
While we're waiting for that, I can tell you one of the ways that I work through some procrastination is I make what I really want to do a reward.
Go ahead.
I make what I really want to do a reward. After
that's
I
a
have,
good idea.
you know, cause I like Facebook, so I like social networking, I like the games and stuff on that. And I won't allow myself to turn on the computer unless I accomplish A, B, and C. And then I can play, but I can only play for so long, and then I have to go back and do C, D, and E, you know, or whatever.
And those are some of the tools, and I can identify which ones you're using there, and we'll go over those, I think, in the next slide. And I do think we heard a little bit of sound, so we'll see what we can hear here.
Maybe you can put your mic, please.
There's an old saying that says, if the first thing you do when you wake up each morning is eat a live frog, nothing worse can happen for the rest of the day.
I thought that would help. Or not. If I click out, will it go back, or should I?
You can close it.
I thought it would just pop up to the big screen, but.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty safe assumption. Well, Brian Tracy has said that your frog should be the most difficult task on your things to do list. The one you're most likely to procrastinate on. Because if you eat that first, it'll give you energy and momentum for the rest of the day. But if you don't, if you let them sit there on the plate while you do 100 unimportant things, it can drain your energy, and you won't even know it. William James, one of the founders of modern psychology, said this: procrastination is attitude's natural assassin. There's nothing so fatiguing as an uncompleted task. So, with that said, here's your assignment for the next 30 days. Take a look at your list. Circle the frog. Eat that first, and you'll thank us for it.
Get back to where we're going here. All right, so I think that's a really good kind of visual, something we can always tell ourselves, especially when we're not recognizing that we might be procrastinating. It's a really good go-to, Lisa, eat the frog. You know, just go do it. And you're right. And then maybe give yourself that reward of, and Gabe, you said it too, just making yourself, okay, do this one thing that you don't want to do. So that's definitely one thing. And I really like how they mentioned that it will, not only will it have the greatest impact on your life, for the rest of the day you'll feel accomplished. You'll have this kind of momentum of efficiency, as opposed to that maybe lingering anxiety that you're feeling like you're not getting things done because you're kind of running from that one thing you know, from the frog, that you know you need to do. So making the tools work for you. It sounds like some of you guys already started identifying some of the things that you guys do in this regard. Scheduling time to schedule, we talked about that. You know, even just if you have to set aside 20 minutes on a Sunday night before your week's really getting started, and seeing what are the things that are coming up, and you know, what does your time look like? Are you going to have days where there is not a moment? And so where can you plan for those things? Plan for interruptions, plan to change rooms, plan to not find a parking spot, those kinds of things. And then, you know, you're not dragging, you're kind of on top of the game there. Learn to delegate, and that's really hard for those of us that, you know, we're independent, we have our own jobs to do. Even though we often are in team environments, things get delegated that, okay, you work on this, you work on this, and we feel like sometimes we're in this bubble of everything we have to do, and we forget that with some things there are ways to help share that load or delegate the littlest detail that might help you out. You know, if you're in college and you have roommates and you're really overwhelmed and you keep needing to get to the store to get one item and your friend's walking out, oh, are you going to the store? Can you grab this? You know, something as simple as that might just be the one thing that helps you a little bit because it's not that nagging thing that you still haven't gotten accomplished. So kind of similarly, learn to ask for help. I think that's another one too with very independent, hardworking people. It might seem like a weakness, but kind of like you mentioned earlier, if we're getting ourselves run down and depleted and always helping everybody else and then we're inefficient all around, and that doesn't benefit everybody. So even just learning to ask for help, sometimes people are willing to give, and maybe the right people have the time to do that or have the expertise, something that's going to be easy for them that was complicated for you. And somebody mentioned earlier learning how to say no and just being able to gracefully do that. And I think it's really important to think about that. We hear the word no and it sounds negative, but it really is benefiting everybody. It's keeping you at a level that you know your boundaries and what you can do, and it's letting other people know what you can and can't take on, and so that you're not running around and scrambling, and then what they've asked of you to do, you might not be as efficient anyway, and so they're frustrated, you're frustrated. So, you know, saying yes in the beginning might sound wonderful and everybody's happy, but if the execution can't come out on the other end, really no would have been better for everybody. So you just have to get comfortable with that. And then accumulate similar tasks together. The easiest, of course, example of that is if you have a lot of errands to run, you know, waiting and maybe all at once instead of, you know, if I was going to come to the university today, but I had one thing I needed to go on the other side of town for, but tomorrow I was going to go on the other side of town for two things, do all of them tomorrow if you can. So that's an easy example of that. Or if you know you have a lot, you know, several phone calls and some emails to make, maybe putting those in that kind of a category. Just emails right now or just phone calls right now. Because I think what you mentioned is when you start to try to do too much and you get this overwhelming feeling, trying to kind of isolate how you can categorize things. You know, whether it's just this subject right now, you know, or I know a lot of people start cleaning and then they find something, oh, and then that stops them and they go do something that pertains to that. And it's like almost kind of retelling yourself, nope, it doesn't pertain to that. I'm only focusing on this right now. So accumulating similar tasks. Also, do difficult things quickly. This is one that I found that I thought was pretty interesting. And it mentions that, what did it mention here? Doing difficult things quickly. Waiting doesn't necessarily make it easier, you know, so just do it. A lot of things are difficult because we just don't want to do them sometimes. And so one example I thought of was a lot of times, what do we put off? We put off taking the trash out in the kitchen, right? And we just kind of keep adding a little bit more to it, add a little bit more to it. Then it actually is creating more of an issue when we go to put something in it, because then we're taking more time to push it down and, you know, all these things. And so really, it's like if you just see it and you're like, I'm going to do that quickly, and you go and you do it, not only is that nagging feeling not there that you still need to take the trash out, but now you've got the space if you need it, and you just mentally feel better about the fact that it's not still back there. So I really like that one too. It's something that I think we don't naturally think of. Just once you recognize it, it's there, it's difficult, and do it quickly. If it's something you can, you know, do quickly. Concentrate on what you're doing. That sounds like it should be an understood, but again, I think we all understand that idea of, oh, here, I'll just look at these 5 emails before I run out to lunch, or I'll make this phone call while I'm driving because that's multitasking and I'll get more done. But then you get off the phone and you get to your destination and you're like, was that a red light or a green light? Did I pay attention? And what did this person say on the phone? So really prioritizing when there's a good need or it's productive to multitask. So just concentrate on what you're doing. Set time limits. You guys, I've heard some of you talk about those, and other appropriate limits like what you will work on or what you will give yourself once you've done something. And I really like time limits as well, you know, especially when you have lots of little things, lots of these things that you'd think, well, I'll multitask, I'll get a little bit of everything done, but then you feel overwhelmed and didn't really get anything done. I really like that one because, okay, whatever I can accomplish in this 15 minutes with this category, I'll get done. And then when that 15, and it kind of gives you that driving energy instead of the overwhelming energy to tackle that. I really like this idea about handling it once, being the idea of just be a 1-minute manager. Deal with it one time. The perfect example was the emails. Don't look at it before you run out to lunch, and then come back and open it back up, and then, you know, deal with it when you have the time to deal with it. Be like, okay, I have 1 minute. What can I do in this 1 minute? I'm gonna take care of this one email. Or I'm not gonna walk home, go to the mailbox, get my mail out, look at it, go set it down on the table, go cook dinner, come back, look at the mail, maybe open 2 pieces of it, come back to it later to go through the junk mail. So now you've spent 3 times with something that's mostly junk mail, or, you know, so almost make a decision that handle it one time. Walk in, open your mail, throw away the junk mail, and if you have a pile for the bills, you know, maybe not sit down and do the bills right then, but handling things once and moving on, would be amazed at how much you can free up your time. And then another one I really liked was complete the cycle. It's another really simple tool that you can kind of trigger in your mind to say, just like eat the frog, complete the cycle. I think a really good general one for the home environment would be, you have laundry, you've started it, you go on to do other things. That's a good one where it's okay to multitask because you're not doing anything when it's in the washer. So then it sits in the dryer, and so you think, well, since it's warm, we'll take it out. But then you get distracted again, and so now it's sitting in a pile that you haven't folded. So then, well, now it's on my bed, and I'm going to go to bed later, so then we move it off the bed to somewhere else. And again, we're not handling it more, you know, now we're handling it several times, not once. And then eventually it ends up back in the dryer when you have the time for it to refluff and get the wrinkles out. And so, you know, just complete the cycle. If you're going to do it right then, go, do it, put it up, fold it, put them away. And then it probably, you know, like it probably took the 1 minute to really do it, to handle it that one time. And kind of even matches the do things quickly, do difficult things. It's not that doing laundry is difficult, but if you just do it quickly and actually get it done, just go take the trash out. It's not that frog that's following you all day long. So those are some kind of practical, easy, I mean, they sound easy, but I'm saying easy as in accessible ways for you guys to take tools with you to use on a daily basis. And then this is another one I came across that I really like, visualize and script. There's research on Olympic athletes that they would close their eyes and visualize performing in their event. And they would, you know, visualize performing from the very beginning, from starting their competition and to finishing, and they would do this in their mind over and over, from the start of the gun to crossing the finish line. And the results were those that visualized winning over and over in their minds did win more often. And so the great thing about that is that your mind and your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what was real and what was imagined. And so, you know, the perfect example is think of fear. When you're sitting in a scary movie, we all know rationally that it's a movie. We know those actors, they're not, you know, they're not really in that scenario. But our mind perceives it as real, and so our body physiologically responds as well. Our heart rate goes up. Some of us have to watch through our fingers. So even though at one level we know it's not real, our body is responding to it like it is. So likewise, if you're visualizing your productive day, you know, maybe when you get up and you get in the shower, that's an area that multitasking might work. You're taking a shower, but you can think and visualize through your day of how am I going to be productive today, and I'm not going to look at my emails right before I go to lunch, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and visualizing how it is going to work out, because I think most of us wake up and it's the next stressful day of this meeting I have to go to, and then I have to try to make it to this class on time. And so almost trick your mind and give it the tools that it needs, because it doesn't know the difference between you know, what's real and what's imagined. And so if you're you know, when those athletes were visualizing that performance, their muscles, their brain, everything inside them was firing just like as if it was happening. So in essence, they prepared their body and their mind to accomplish those things before they ever started them. So I really think that's an important aspect, even if we're incorporating all these little tools, our mindset and our approach towards it makes a huge difference. So script your day from start to finish, how things are going to go well. And then in the moment, it's almost like your brain remembers that neural pathway that you've prepared it for, so that it's gonna want to do that. And it kind of reminded me very much so, it's almost like the law of attraction. Like you're putting out there at the beginning of the day how things are gonna go, like this self-fulfilling prophecy through this visualization. And it's like your body wants to work with that then and let things fall into place that way. So about time mastery, when you are in control of your time, you feel more productive, you feel happier, you're less stress-free, and tend to be healthy. It does take time to get there to time mastery, but also a reminder to take time to enjoy the process. Sometimes we are so overwhelmed at our schedules that we forget to take those moments to just kind of enjoy, wow, I'm on the journey to graduating. Someday I'm going to look back right now and, oh, I wish I was in grad school again, or oh, weren't those the days? And so even just taking those few moments to tell ourselves that. Also, because the role that stress plays, if we're always constantly living in stress, when it relates to time management, it's a hidden bandit in and of itself. Because again, with the brain, it creates that hidden loop that you're stressed out. And then if your adrenaline is always going, if it kicks in your cortisol, which is a stress hormone, physiologically, your body is constantly responding in that fight or flight or stressful state. And over time, chronically, it's going to make you less effective, less productive. It's going to affect your moods, your energy levels. It can even affect, over time, the high cortisol levels in your body can affect your metabolism. So literally at a real level, stress, can be one of the factors in weight gain. And so all of that is kind of a hidden bandit that we don't even recognize is happening when we are constantly living with stress. So time mastery is definitely something that helps us be more healthy, productive, happier. I added this just to make sure, to kind of relate it to students about study time, how we can utilize some of these things we've talked about with studying, estimating our study time. I kind of almost doing the same example with what time do I really think it's going to take for me to read this chapter, to review, the review questions, and then kind of match that with what you were mentioning about when your productive times are. If you know that you're at home and you really want to be watching Grey's Anatomy, but that's the time you allotted to study, realistic expectations. But if you know you have 2 hours in between classes and you're on campus and you happen to notice that, wow, I usually just hang out in the UC and don't get anything done, but you're aware that you're pretty productive at that time of day, then just learning to swap your UC available time to study, and then you still get to watch Grey's Anatomy or whatever it might be for you. So matching those hours with your times and recognizing what are tough subjects for you. And maybe if it's not school, recognizing what's tough for you in terms of your job responsibilities. And then trying to limit yourself to 2 hours or less. There is research that shows the optimum time is about, I think, 90 minutes for your brain before it kind of needs a mental break, or that it's really going to be the most optimal. So give yourself that time, even if it's a 5-minute break, and then you're going to switch gears into something else or go back to that. And then that way, too, when you've really learned to master some of these techniques with your time management, giving yourself a 5-minute break now becomes something where we're enjoying those breaks, that you can walk outside and enjoy the fresh air and remember to breathe. And it's not so much an escape where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to have a 5-minute break. And then even then, we're not enjoying those 5-minute breaks. We're more like escaping and not wanting to get back at what we're doing. So back to another to-do list now that we've done kind of the master schedule and we've looked at our big priorities. Then when you're just doing a daily to-do list that works for a lot of people, often doing it before bed the night before so that you remember everything you have in the morning. And a lot of people prioritize them. One system is the ABC or the 1, 2, 3. I think Franklin Covey uses that. And then here's a good example of eating the frog, that we often have that urge to do the lower priority things before we do the higher priority ones. So just go ahead and tackling the frog. Crossing off tasks as you complete them. There is something psychological about getting that done and then transferring things to the next day. But one thing I wanted to add to that is trying the alternative list is what I called it. And that, to me, helps create a more positive loop, because I know for me, when you keep crossing off things that you have done, but then there's still a lot that's not crossed off and you have to keep adding it to the next day, that keeps you in that feeling that you're never done, that this race is winning you and you're not winning the race. And so what I've also done is I keep a list of everything that I did accomplish for that day, and I add in the things, all those little things that took us away from getting to accomplish our list. And so, well, I didn't make it to the grocery store, but I did end up talking to the neighbor, or I did return, you know, this one thing I needed to return to the store, or I did answer those 3 phone calls and help those 3 customers. So actually adding those and writing those down, it helps me see at the end of the day and kind of that empowering feeling of all that I did get done, as opposed to we're always looking at what we didn't accomplish. Because there's always things that come up in the day that we did do, they just weren't what was actually on our list. So I called that the alternative list, because it helps with that positive loop of us feeling empowered and that we're still in the driver's seat. And then another possible tool that I came across that Franklin Covey utilizes is the weekly compass. And here's the handout on that. You can just look at one of those tablets. But the idea of it is that and it does relate with similar things that we've talked about, you're identifying the positive roles in your life on the compass card. So everywhere where there's that category that says roles, this might be student, this might be intern, employee, mother, spouse, all the things that to you are roles in your life. If there's organizations you're part of, church, a hobby. So writing those as the major roles. And then again, and other things might be soccer mom, you know, something that you're helping out with, home executive, family member, marathon runner. So kind of all the categories in your life. Then also at the very top, it says sharpen the saw. And then it has physical, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And this section is where you're supposed to record an activity that stimulates you, something you enjoy. These could be your hobbies, something that you could do during the week in those areas. And some of them you might already do. You might already go to church. You might already exercise on your lunch hour, that kind of a thing. So, and the importance of that is just to recognize that if we don't do some of those top things at the list of sharpening our saw, then it's almost like we're working with a blade all week long that's dull and is not as effective. So remembering, because those are often the times, and I think that's important why they put it at the very top, it's often the times those are the things that we can knock out the easiest when we run out of time. Well, I don't have time, we'll skip church tonight, or oh, I don't have time, I'll run tomorrow. But really those are the things that help keep our personal saw sharpened, and they can be individual for each person, everybody's values. So then as the roles, what you do, number 3, you list what's your big rock for that each goal for that week. So if I'm a grad student, then my big rock for that week might be the exam that I have on Friday. So then you'd write that down, and then ask yourself what activities are going to impact me in that role. So, well, if I can study 3 days of the week, that's going to help me with my big rock. So then you'll know how to take that, break that down, and where are you going to add those 3 study times on your schedule. So you basically transfer your big rocks into little appointments and tasks that you can then put into your week. And now that you know what your week really looks like, you know where you can allot it and put it in. And that way it really does get back to that your most critical life goals get that priority and they aren't pushed aside for all the small minutiae of tasks that creep up on us. So I like that was kind of another way to round up how we've all been talking about a lot of those similar tasks and tools. And then finally, we've talked about how we all feel like we're kind of running this race. We need to regain control of our time. So we very much feel that time is this scarcity, that we feel like it's this limited, finite construct that we have to deal within. But almost trying to get ourselves also kind of tricking our brain again, or working with that positive affirmations of time abundance. And so maybe trying to help ourselves recognize that some mantras we could tell ourselves. Like, you know what, I have plenty of time to get everything that I need to get done today. I can manage my time effectively. Just telling ourselves this, because if we're always telling ourselves, I don't have enough time, I can't get it all done, again, our mind doesn't know the difference between what's really happening and what isn't happening. So if we're just telling ourselves and reminding ourselves, I have more than enough time to do what matters the most. And I really like this one because, you know what, at the end of the semester, it all gets done. Somehow I can always look back at the end of the semester and it all got done. And so just remembering that, you know what, last semester I felt this way about this part of the year, but it all got done. And so that really helps put you back in that driver's seat feeling instead of feeling like you're running the rat race. And then I added back to the two that we kind of talked about, eat the frog and complete the cycle, just because sometimes we want that positive mantra that we need to tell ourselves, like, I do have enough time. But then sometimes we're in that mode where we need more of that aggressive or we need that kind of competitive push, especially when things do get more elevated, when it is down to the wire. So that might be where you kind of add these in as your mantras when you need that more of the tough love approach rather than the self-affirmation. So just remembering to eat the frog, complete the cycle, just do it. So now putting it all together, a lot of it's just awareness, being aware of how you do lose your time. I think everybody starts to know themselves and recognize this is a good tool to help see that visually, even if you didn't want to admit to yourself that, wow, if I always have 4 hours available and I do seem to check Facebook a lot, maybe that's where I can set some of those healthy boundaries. Customizing the time management that works for you, knowing your pitfalls. And I just often tell people, give it a try for 21 days. This might be something that it's a tool to help you use, but it might be overwhelming for some people that think that they're going to always have to live this way. But if it's something where it just helps you start to understand how you work, what your pitfalls are, what strategies really do help you, just learning to remember to eat the frog or complete the cycle, then it doesn't have to be something that you always do. It was a tool that you helped use you to refuel you. And just, of course, always to remember, like we had mentioned before, that it's a process and things are going to change and evolve. Just like with technology, now we might have new and better resources that help you organize and be efficient. So, and then again, if you're wanting more resources for personal skills training in this area, you can come see the University Counseling Center. We do have professionals that can work with you on that. So on that note, I want to thank you guys for coming, taking the time to regain control of your time, and put those great tools to use.